Hello, and welcome back to my channel. So today, as the title suggests, we are going to be discussing cursing. It's going to be a very basic 101 video. I also want to be upfront with you guys. I'm going to preface this upfront so you know what to expect from this. What I will be discussing is some misconceptions about cursing, to address certain beliefs, to talk about the morals and ethics of cursing, like when should we not curse, or when should you or should you not curse, to help you decide that, because, well, that's another thing I wish to preface. My moral standards are likely not yours. I am not here to sit in my moral seat and preach to you. That is not my responsibility, nor do I frankly care to. I would actually prefer that people make up their own, decisions, make up their own minds on how to do things and when to do things, when it is ethical, when it is not ethical to do so. I am going to, provide this information as is. Do with it what you will. I will not be held responsible for whatever you do with this information, and I will also not be providing you with specific individual curses that you can use on people in specific situations. Now, the reason for this is because there are just so many variables, so many ways in which to utilize magic to affect another person or situations or even institutions in certain manners. And I just think it is a very highly personalized thing. Magic is a very highly personalized thing. I think that what works for one person does not work for another, and vice versa, of course, because we all have different symbolism that we use in magic, because at the end of the day, that is, of course, all what magic is. It is manipulation of energy, of will and intent through the use of ritual and symbolism to bring about change, to manifest certain things from happening, to prevent certain things from happening, excuse me, or to cause certain things to happen. So I'm not going to be providing specifics, and of course I have to be upfront about it. I also don't wish to give away my secrets. So, the prerequisite that you will have to use the information in this video is going to have to be that you are already somewhat familiar with a specific system, or that you have your own system that you deal with, that you work with, that you have developed perhaps. And of course, usually part of being initiated into a system is going to bring with it various elements of having to defend yourself against curses, of being able to curse, etc., etc. So the information that I am providing here is more to make you think on the morals, the ethics of it, to make you think on how you should approach cursing as someone who practices war magic, basically, because that's what I have taken to calling it. I know that's not a very original term, because there are plenty of people who use that term. However, I frequently, as mentioned in several of my other videos, find myself engaged in magic ritual, in magic duels, excuse me, where other practitioners for some reason decide to attack me because of the content that I put out sometimes, which I find highly surprising, because it shouldn't be that controversial or strange, but I suppose people have a variety of reasons for wanting to do so. And yeah, no, I mean, it happens, it has happened, and it will undoubtedly happen again, and that's okay with me, because I personally enjoy the challenge, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, I suppose. And if that is something that you also find appealing, or if it is something that you at least wish to know how to defend yourself against, of course, or if you just wish to possess that kind of information just in case, then I have the highest respect for that, of course. So let's first get started on the portion that asks us, what is a curse? At its very core, like everything magic related, a curse is the utilization of energy and of will and intent. However, contrary to, for example, a healing spell or a finance spell to draw abundance and wealth and finances to you, a curse is aimed, at least I would hope so, aimed at someone else, because cursing yourself seems like a very stupid thing to do. But I mean, you never know. So a curse is aimed at someone else. It is the ritual manifestation, I would say, of causing bad things to happen to another person in a wide variety of different categories. Now, what I mean by that is you can target someone's finances, you can target someone's health, you can target someone's love life. You can target someone's sexual life or even sexual functioning. I mean, curses like that are not unheard of. You can cause a person to have just general bad luck. You can even, if you are skilled and strong enough, powerful enough, and know what you're doing, know how to properly manipulate the energy, even kill someone with it outright. You can kill someone indirectly through causing them to end up in an accident, something like that, or maybe even draw someone to them that could cause them harm, stuff like that. So these are all things that you can bring about through the ritual use of cursing. And I am very well aware that to some of you this may feel like a unsavory topic to talk about, but in my line of work, it is a necessity to know about this, particularly because, as I will discuss later on, I used to be of the opinion that cursing should never ever be done unless in the utmost circumstances, but certain things happened as a result of my initiation into the Elder Fulfark runes that ironically caused me to do a complete 180 and made me realize that, hey, there is no shame sometimes in being on the offensive. There is no shame sometimes in being on the giving end of pain and punishment, because I come from a Christian background, as I've mentioned repeatedly throughout my series, where of course it is taught to you that one should turn the other cheek, and that it is taught to you that one should just let God solve everything, which is of course highly ridiculous, because that is taking away so much of your own power. It is, I don't think, something that I need to go too much into with you, with my viewer base. I don't really believe that that is something that I need to expound upon, but suffice to say that if you are, interested in learning to reclaim your power, I think that cursing is a very valuable tool in doing so. In reclaiming your own autonomy and reclaiming your own, in reclaiming your boundaries, even if you find yourself perhaps in abusive situations, just something that I will also be discussing later on in this video. Suffice to say, there are many reasons and ways on why and how and what and for what reason a curse could be utilized. So, like I said, a curse will often be directed towards an opponent's finances, love life, mental, physical health, energetic functioning. I have even had a individual who came to me who I do not know on a personal basis, but they were like, I am hearing voices in my head that I didn't hear until a while ago, and I have no idea what's causing it. So I, did my magical workings, and we conjured a spiritual protector for them, and this ended up causing the voices to go away. And this is just one example of what it can do. There are many stories about curses that can affect a man's erectile performance. There are curses to make a woman barren so that she can't bear children. There are curses that can literally cause people to get into car accidents. I have had a good friend of mine. We once got attacked by a magician who felt somehow that my friend was deserving of being attacked. My friend was on the very late at night on a crossroads, or just like a city crossroads, I should say, like a regular city crossroads. And she was at a red light. She did not see any other cars. Okay, so she was at a red light. The light turned green, and she did not see any previous cars there. But suddenly, when she looked again, there was a car on the right that was suddenly there, and that was literally just running through that light that they were not supposed to run through. And that was probably one of the closest times that my friend has ever gotten to being killed. And sure enough, when she came home, she had like a vacant look in her eyes, a void in her eyes, and I could tell that there was just like all this black, droopy energy, or at least that was the way it appeared to me, with the usage of my third eye. That was just covering her, and she was completely drained of energy, completely drained of all sorts of fire inside her, if you will. And so what I did is I grabbed a big piece of paper. I designed a spell that basically was meant to draw out the curse from her, which was sent into the paper. And after that, I took the paper. I obviously protected myself beforehand before touching it. I drew several runes. I drew a sort of alchemical, geometrical pattern on it. And I basically sent the spell back to sender, and we never ever heard from that magician or his spirits ever again. So that is the kind of stuff that you are potentially dealing with if you are going to be cursing people, or if you are going to be on the receiving end of a curse. So even if you do not wish to actively utilize cursing to other people, it never hurts to be able to defend yourself. There is this saying that you see online, like on Facebook, for example, that says that a witch who does not know how to curse is a witch who does not know how to heal, and I am actually very firmly in agreement with that. So I do actually think that it serves, because you can't heal what you don't understand, and if you don't understand how to curse, then you don't understand how to heal. I think that is a very sensible, logical thing to consider there. So if you are someone who is a little iffy on whether I should look into this, and if I should research this, my advice is absolutely, definitely do it. If nothing else, just to be able to protect yourself and others who may come into contact with that, because witch wars, mage wars, they're surprisingly common, I found, and they happen for the pettiest fucking reasons. So I've, like I said, noticed this. It's just content that you may put out on your YouTube channel, which is completely optional or free to watch or click off or ignore. I have a humble 260 subscribers. I mean, I'm not some of the other massive occult channels that are on YouTube, and even I get attacked. It's very strange to me why someone would bother to put the time into attacking someone like me. Now, I am aware that I actively do things against the Abrahamic religions, and it is usually my experience that people who attack me are somehow convincing themselves that they are, okay with practicing Abrahamic magic, even though the Abrahamic traditions usually forbid that one should not practice magic, which, that whole tradition it's turned on its own head. It's turned on its own morals and standards and ethics, and it does and does not surprise me to see people like that frequently attacking me, because the hypocrisy is already so grand that they don't even see it themselves anymore. So that is not to say that I have never been attacked by a black magician, for example. I have. I usually deal with those in different but equally firm manners. Pagan individual, although I do very firmly believe, and this is why I have not retaliated to this individual person, that they were misinformed about me, which is why I did not retaliate. I just, my barriers caught it basically, and I just let it slide. I talked to my gods about it, and I believe that the situation has been resolved, because I do not know this person personally, but I have never heard anything from them again. I have never been, had received an attempted curse or an attempted energetic attack or spiritual attack or anything of the sort from this individual ever again. So, there is always, this is some caution that I wish to give here, there is always some modicum of intel gathering that one should be engaged in before one retaliates. But again, more on that later. So various kinds of curses will go by different names. There are, of course, the terms hexes, jinxes, to cross someone out. And then there is, of course, the general curse term that many people use. Now, I personally don't really differentiate between those. It depends on what tradition you're from, I suppose. It depends on what your background is and how you wish to use these words. I mean, some people might categorize them and say that, hexes are like weaker and curses are like stronger. Then there is, of course, familial, generational, ancestral curses and all that stuff that pass down through bloodlines. I've had to deal with those. Usually those require like, uncrossing baths or like a certain ancestral work in undoing and stuff like that. So these are all things that you need to consider. Curses can have many different intensities, many different varieties, different things that they target. And especially with ancestral and familial curses, if you are free, that probably means that your descendants, your specific descendants, as in your biological children, will be free from it as well. But that does not mean that that applies for the rest of your family. So if you are dealing with a ancestral or lineage curse, if you break free from it, and your children will then be free from it, but that does not mean that the rest of your family is cured, like I said. So you may want to do extra work in order to facilitate them being free of that, if you so desire, of course. So these are all different things that you may want to take into consideration. I personally just refer to all these things: hexes, jinxes, crossing out, ancestral curses, just as curses. They have the same effect, intent, and goal, roughly, and that is to sow discord, pain, death, etc. And that is just what I call it. It's just all curses to me, or different varieties and intentions behind them, of course. So. The second point that I really wanted to address is, because you hear this a lot with the advent of Wicca. Do I get karma from cursing someone? Will it come back to me threefold? Is the Almighty God going to come out of his fucking thundercloud and shoot me in the ass with a thunderbolt? My answer to that is probably not. I have never found this. I have hurled plenty of curses in the time that I've been active in Magic. And like I said in the beginning, this is a concern that I used to have. I used to always just be sitting on the defensive. I always used to just like, deflect the curse, remove it from myself, and not retaliate, until it happened one day that I stumbled across the fact that my that a good friend and person that was someone that I looked up to had been putting curses on me and made my situation worse left and right, behind my back, and I thought that they were helping me. I thought that they were, guiding me through my issues, and this turned out not to be the case. They just turned out to have reinforced all these things, all these issues that I was having, and put on extra layers. Gods know why. Probably because they worked for the Abrahamic God and many other deities associated with the Abrahamic God, because make no mistake, the Abrahamic God does not work alone. There are certain deities who, are in cahoots with him, I would say. Yahweh, or we are talking about, of course, who he has either enslaved, has subjugated, or who are merely just in cahoots with him, but who may not be overt about their allegiances with Yahweh. So this person directly, indirectly works for Yahweh, or worked for Yahweh, I should say, at this point. But they basically piled on curses on me under the guise of helping me. And this is, of course, a very common method of doing it if you have direct access to the person. This is something that you see a lot in voodoo and hoodoo, where you gather pieces of the person, like toenails or clippings of the hair or the beard, or where you collect stuff like that, and which you then put in a bag, and you put all sorts of herbs, and basically you're cursing the person directly through direct usage of their bodily tissue in whatever variety and matter. Again, there are so many varieties of it. I will not be going into individual ways of doing it, but suffice to say, it is possible to do it through these parts of a person's body. It is also possible to do it without ever touching or even seeing the person. I've done that. It has been done to me. So it doesn't necessarily require that you have to have access to a person directly in the physical. Hell, I've had objects stolen from my house back in the earlier days, which just completely vanished, and that was then used against me. And then you have to like cut the energetic cords to the item. But even then, there's like, residue of you on that item, and that can still be used, although the effect will be lessened. Blah blah blah, yada yada. So there is so much that you can discuss when it comes to cursing and when it comes to defense against cursing. Um, but that is basically why I decided to make this video, to give you a general indication of what you should be aware of and what you should, of course, be, considering if you are dealing with these kinds of things. But back on the topic of karma, of the threefold law, such as the Wiccans have, and I'm saying this with all due respect to Wiccans, but I find the idea a little silly. A threefold law. If that was the case, everybody would be bathing in gold, because everybody would be doing great things for everybody else. And, someone might argue with me that is obviously not as literal as that, but I think it is as literal as that. Because if you receive, if you dish out a curse to someone and you get threefold something back, let's discuss a hypothetical scenario here, okay? Suppose that you get raped tomorrow. That's a very sensitive topic, I'm aware, and that's exactly why I'm using it, because it's a heavy topic. It's a very heavy-handed, very disgusting, gross topic, and that's exactly why I'm putting it forth. Okay, so you get raped tomorrow, all right? Or somebody shoots your dog, okay? That dog has done absolutely nothing. They were just sitting there. Someone just grabs a gun for no reason whatsoever. Hypothetical mind game like you do in philosophy. Boom, someone shoots your dog, someone rapes you. And they just find it fun, okay? So you are now forever scarred. Your dog is dead, and you are going to have to live forever with the damage and the trauma that the rape has caused you. So are you going to tell me that if you curse someone in that situation, that you are still going to get paid threefold over the curse that you send at that person? No offense, but that doesn't seem very fair to me. Now, I am very well aware that the universe is not a fair place. However, the same would have to be visited on your rapist, right? And the person that shot your dog. So the same person would have to get raped threefold over if the universe did indeed work that way. That same person would have to get raped threefold over, and that same person would have to get 3 of their pets killed as well. But that doesn't happen, does it? So when I'm saying that things are disempowering, when karma, the idea of karma as it is presented to us in the West, in our new agey thing that we currently got going on, if that is how karma works according to you, I think you need to look a little at your definitions and at your experiences of the world, because that seems mighty strikingly naive. And I again say that with all due respect, because I know that people just want to believe in a fair and just and loving universe, but it is not my experience that this is exactly how it works. This threefold over thing, again, this individual that raped you would have to get raped threefold over in return. Now, of course, you might be able to cite a situation or an instance in where that has indeed happened. For example, rapist gets caught, goes to jail, then gets raped by Bubba, who, uses him as his little boyfriend every day for the rest of his life. That is possible. Absolutely. However, in many situations, this does not actually happen. Historically, it was probably a lot easier to get away with rape than it is nowadays. Okay? So imagine historically all the people who got away with rape, all right, who never ever got raped in the rest of their lives. That there just disproves the threefold law. That there also disproves karma in that sense. Now, when I say karma in that sense, I am not denying that there is a sort of backlash. Every person that has ever cursed will tell you, and that is what I'm going to go into now, that karma is in some way, shape, or form indeed a thing, and I am in agreement with that. I have experienced it. Now, when I say karma, I am talking about you step on someone's toes, that same foot is going to be buried up your ass tomorrow if you are not careful. Okay, so It is just that simple. You screw someone over long enough, eventually they're going to stand up and fight back. And if you do it to too many people, one of them, some of them, many of them may eventually start getting up and rising up against you. That is what karma is to me. It is merely cause and effect. That is, as we call that in the Germanic tradition, the law of Orlog, cause and effect. That is how the universe came about. So that is not necessarily the same thing as this tally system that many people seem to think the universe consists of, where it is like you do one good deed and you get one good deed paid back to you. That is not how I have experienced it. Because if that was the case, I would again be bathing in money. I would be bathing in all sorts of nice things because I have done so many, nice spells for people. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just saying this as a matter of fact because that is what I've done. And, if that is the way it worked, that would have already happened. Now, of course, there are many other things that I know about, such as past life contracts that I'm still currently working on that have prevented certain things from coming to me. And I get that. But that is not what I'm saying. I'm sure that you get the gist of what I am telling you. It is not a tally system. It doesn't work like that. Just like the threefold law doesn't work like it says it does, or like it is portrayed to work. It doesn't. It is quite simple. Now, there are some, of course, who would say that karma lasts or comes back to you maybe over lifetimes. And I would ask to you, okay, there is also a modicum of truth to that. I agreed with that because, again, past life contracts that I've discussed frequently on this channel are indeed a thing. Now, I do not, however, think that it is so simple. And even then, is it fair? Because if you did something 1,000 years ago that was a different person, yes, it was you, it was your soul, it was your spirit, I suppose, but it is also not you. So there are a lot of moral and ethical problems that we are facing when we are dealing with this idea of karma and this idea of the threefold law and all these, ideas of punishment and reward that we have installed in our psyche. So I just don't think that this is how it works. Rather, what I do think is that when you are casting a curse on someone, when you are channeling that negative energy in order to shape it, in order to transmute it into something that can legitimately be called a curse that you are placing on someone, you are drawing and working with, and therefore by default, absorbing negative energy. And because you are working with negative energy and because you are putting it out, you are manifesting that right back. And that is where I think that idea comes from. Now, that does not mean that you can't protect yourself against it. And that's where the kicker is, of course, because if you can design certain protective wards and design certain rituals that you can use afterwards to cleanse yourself, to, wash it off of you, to purify yourself, you are greatly reducing the backlash of a curse or a potential backlash or, whatever. So that is something that I do want you to keep in mind. There are ways to, I would not even necessarily say nullify, but dampen, to reduce, to deflate the backlash that you could potentially be facing from working with negative energy. Now, if you work a lot with curses, I would definitely absolutely recommend that you design ritualized methods of dealing with this, and maybe even look into designing certain magical shields, barriers, things that can maybe even transmute energy in such a manner. Because keep in mind, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is simply changed and directed. So that is something that I want to give you if you wish to take measure in this regard in trying to protect yourself against this backlash. And this may take some work, this may take some tinkering. Hell, I'm not gonna lie, even I have not, even though I do this a lot, this cursing, I have not found a foolproof way yet to completely nullify, backlash, because I still have that if I curse someone, I'll have a fight with a friend the day after or something like that, so these are things that you also need to be prepared for in dealing with if you wish to curse. So you know, that is something that you want to be cautious of if you are dealing with this. And last but not least, the mind is our most powerful tool, because that is what, of course, magic is based on. It is our will, it is our intent, and our manifestation that we are trying to, exert on our reality, if you will. So, two, if you have, and I would actually argue that this whole idea of a free fall law and karma, like you often hear it explained, is a very dangerous thing for the magician. And in fact, I would argue that you should absolutely strip yourself of this idea. If you wish to be a successful sorcerer, if you wish to be a successful magician, witch, shaman, whatever, you would do well to strip yourself off of these preconceived notions of retribution, like some universal divine power is going to cause retribution in your life. The reason I'm saying that is because it will work against you. Because if you are going to curse someone, and A, if you feel guilt during a ritual, it is A, going to hamper your curse, but B, it is also going to afterwards manifest, like literally you are manifesting negativity being drawn to you. And in this sense, there is the truth of what you put out is what you draw in. So in that sense, it is a very literal thing. If you are putting out that you deserve to be punished for cursing someone, that is exactly the kind of energy that you are going to be drawing in. I absolutely don't think that I deserve to be punished for cursing someone, frankly, because I don't curse people who don't deserve it. And when I say that, I am absolutely not talking about someone who just randomly called me a name. I might wish them, like, I hope you have a fucking bad day tomorrow. Sure, but I am not going to sit there in my ritual circle and hurl, like, some finance curse at them or something. I don't do that. Sure, I may feel the impulse. I'm human, and I suggest that you get that under control, just like I have to control it, just like everybody else has to control it, because that is, of course, a thing that you have to deal with once you see that your curses are that they're taking effect and that they are manifesting, and that you see the other person being hindered and hampered or damaged in some way, shape, or form. That is something that you need to guard yourself against. You don't want to go on this psychotic, mad power trip and just cursing everybody for the slightest perceived insult that you are receiving. That is not ethical. It is not moral. It is not humane, and you do not wish to have other people do that to you when you accidentally piss them off for some reason. So I suggest that you also don't do that to them. So because at the end of the day, you're not perfect, they're not perfect, nobody's perfect. We're all in this together, and this may lead people to certain concerns of why why would I want to curse, because isn't that something that bad people do? Am I not a better person for being passive? Am I not a better person for wanting to just sit on the defensive and not harming another being? Um, I would disagree. I think that it is literally a matter of reclaiming your own power. Even knowing that you can do it is in and of itself very liberating, especially those who come from the very disempowering Abrahamic traditions, as I mentioned earlier, who tell us that we are evil people for wanting to stand up for ourselves and for not wanting to be someone who wants to subjugate themselves to the whims of Yahweh, who, let's face it, 99.99% of times doesn't actually do anything. He doesn't do anything if it's not in his best interest. How many people get on their knees who are like starving, who have 5 kids to feed, and who are like single mothers? How many single mothers get on their knees every night to pray for fucking finances and food and whatever? Does he listen? No, he doesn't. He doesn't give a shit. Um, it doesn't matter what that individual says. It doesn't matter what that deity says. Sure, he may carry the title of deity, but at the end of the day, you are a deity too. You are a divine soul, and these religions want you to forget that. They want you to forget that by ensnaring you in all these religious contracts and these dedications, these baptisms, and all this stuff that takes away your power. Because make no mistake, that is exactly what a baptism is. It is a legal granting of permission for this individual to take away your power. I have seen this time and time again in Christians. I've seen this in myself. It takes away power from your upper chakras. It unroots you, it ungrounds you, which in turn therefore makes you worried. It causes you to be having low self-esteem and guilt, which are things that attack the solar plexus, the self-esteem, the seat of the self, uh, guilt and self-loathing. That is, of course, affecting the heart chakra. It is the sexual repression. It disables your, your sacral chakra and not being able to express yourself. This also, degenerates the throat chakra. These are all things that are just so unhealthy. All these things in this, all these things in these religions, they are so incredibly unhealthy for human beings. They are not things that befit a divine being, and I think that cursing, therefore, is a very prominent tool in the arsenal of the of the magician, of the sorcerer, of the shaman, of the witch, if you will, to liberate oneself. Because you will see, finally, that you have that power. You have the power to alter your reality in such a way that you can finally exert justice where there previously was none. Because as I have discussed in my peripheral rune, which is of course the rune of Orlog, of Weird, of cause and effect, of free will, of the web of fate, etc., etc. Ultimately, the universe has no inherent meaning. And this may seem very bleak to some of you, especially if you come out of the Abrahamic traditions. And I know, because I have faced and worked through all these things already. But and I'm not saying that again to brag or anything, because I know it was absolutely sucky to work through. I get it, but it is something that will help you realize that when you finally realize that you have the power to lay down the law on another person, and if you are a healthy, mentally healthy, morally stable, and ethical person, and again, you don't need to follow a deity to be a ethical, moral person. Okay, you don't need someone above you to, punish you in order for you to be able to decide that hurting someone without proper provocation is wrong. Okay, you don't need that, and I am going to assume and trust that the viewer watching this is capable and able and willing to understand this too. Because I'm pretty sure that most of the individuals who delve into the metaphysical are also primarily looking for self-development and empowerment, and not just for tools to, cast down their enemies. And it's great fun, casting down your enemy if they hurt you like significantly and sincerely, having justice exacted on them. It's great. It's a beautiful feeling. I have not ever felt that vengeance was bittersweet. I've always felt it was a very sweet thing, actually. And some of you might say that it was that is an evil thing. I disagree. I think that sometimes the record needs to be set straight. Um, and yeah, no, I don't think that makes me a bad person. I don't think that makes you a bad person. And to harken back to the example of being raped and having your dog shot, would you not want to see justice? What if the person never gets caught? What if they never get punished? At least you'll have the satisfaction of knowing that their life falls apart because you had the power to judge them, even if the court of law did not have such a capability. So I find this a very, in hindsight, very interesting shift in my own perspective, because, like I said, I used to not be of this opinion, because I thought that this would make me a bad, evil person, because, let God judge them. Vengeance is mine, you see all that shit in the Bible, but it never actually happens. So it only happens when blaspheme against Christianity itself, like I do, because I'm a open opponent of the Abrahamic religions, especially Christianity, because I know most about that. I'm pretty honest and open about it. Yes, I get shit from it. Yes, I get attacked for it by both spirits and magicians, and it is what it is. This is the path I've chosen. I walk this warrior shaman path. It is what it is. I think this world needs to be rid of this taint. I think humanity must absolutely abandon Christianity, must absolutely abandon Islam and Judaism if it ever wishes to rise out of the spiritual cesspool that we find ourselves in. I absolutely agree with that, because if you knew the horrors that it inflicts on a spiritual level, you would say the same. But to not make this too much of a propaganda video, because I'm talking about cursing here, but um, back on that topic. So why should you curse? Now, because of all the reasons that I have discussed prior. Um, so let me cite you an example that I know from a secondhand experience. A very good friend of mine who was abused. She was an abuse victim as a kid from 4 years old, from the moment that she could walk. Both her and her sister, they were physically abused, not sexually, fortunately, but physically, as in they were beaten the shit out of by their father. Okay, and this lasted all the way up until they left their homes. All right, so this happened, and my friend, they still have massive amounts of PTSD from it. My friend has no money to afford therapy because we live in the United States, and mental health care. As a student of psychology, I am very well aware that it is very expensive here, and I find it pretty abhorrent because back in my home country, this is fortunately not the case. But yeah, no. So she has a lot of mental trauma and a lot of every time a male around her, because her father was the one to abuse her, of course, every time a male around her gets angry, even if one of her best friends gets angry around her, she immediately launches into this PTSD attack. And this damage is, of course, something that may potentially remain with her to some degree for the rest of her life, if it does not get treated. And I fully aim to assist her, of course, and support her and back her in this. But I am also aware that she needs to see a third-party psychologist at some point, who can offer a neutral, independent opinion there. But because even though I'm being trained to deal with these kinds of things, I am also a friend, and therefore it is not professional of me to directly engage with such therapeutic measures, I suppose, in such a manner. But this damage is of course done by someone who was supposed to be a protector, a father figure, who was supposed to be the primary caregiver of this individual. And instead they have taken that power, they have taken that influence, and they have completely perverted and twisted it. And I saw fit to, when I heard about this, and when one day she had a massive PTSD attack, and I saw her, and I was just sitting there, and I was looking at her scream her lungs out, and I just thought to myself, you know what, this guy needs to pay. And later that week, I sat down, I put down my black candles, and I decided to launch some rather nasty curses. I contacted the spirit that I have a contract with, and I put them on this individual, and the rest is history, as they say. So, yeah, that is a pretty nasty example, of course, but if you must ask yourself, are there situations in which it is justified to curse? In my personal opinion, absolutely. Absolutely there are. Absolutely there are. Because there is evil in the world, and there might be some who would say don't fight evil with evil. I personally don't think that punishing evil people is evil, and that is the end of it. I don't think that I am punishing evil with evil when I curse someone who deserves it. And I don't think that any sane or rational person would feel the same way. Because at the end of the day, the institutions that we have, the courts of law that we have, they are very valuable tools, of course. But sometimes those, those systems, those things, they just don't catch everything that happens. Because my friend was abused as a kid. I mean, how are you going to collect evidence? How are you going to take it to court? It was years ago that it ended. There are no ways for anybody to legally prove to a court of law that this did indeed happen. And rather than just walking up to someone and harming them, which is, by the way, absolutely not what I'm advocating here. Magic is a very interesting and great tool to use to exact justice in that matter, I would say. Because as they say, all it takes for evil men to win is for good people to do nothing. So how do I curse? Well, this is going to be a somewhat convoluted section. I am aware of that because, as I stated in the beginning, I am not going to give you exact specific curses to deal with, to work with. But I am, however, going to provide you some basic pointers and some basic information to help you get started. So you can curse when you are solitary, you can curse in a group, you can curse in a coven, you can curse with the help and assistance of spirits, like I mentioned earlier, that I personally have done. You can curse with the assistance of deities, plenty of deities who specialize in magic, Odin, the Morrigan, probably several beings from the Goetia or the Gucha, or however you pronounce it. They are more than willing to help you, usually for a price, which is fair. You know, I mean, they're providing you a service. You are providing them payment. In that sense, they would almost be like hired assassins. However, I would recommend that you do first build a relationship of trust and perhaps friendship with a specific deity, or a business relationship if you are that kind of individual that prefers that instead. You may, obviously have different relationships with different spirits and deities. There's obviously, there's that. So I'm very, close working with Odin. A friend of mine works closely with the Morrigan, and therefore, by extension, I work with her a lot. I work with several other deities who, have Hecate, for example, another friend of mine who's a witch who mostly works with Hecate. Therefore, by extension, I also work with her. Deities like that, deities of magic, deities who may empower your spells, who may have knowledge of effective cursing, etc., etc. These may be called on, again, usually for a price or in return for another favor, which is in essence also payment. You may give up basic energy, and I'm talking like a bulk chunk of energy, not, of course, permanent energy. Um, you know, these are all kinds of payments. You can do assignments for them in return. You can make, for example, a video if you have like a YouTube channel. You can make songs in their honor. These are all the kinds of payment that you can give. Buy a statue to put on your altar for them, whatever. The possibilities are, just like curses themselves, quite endless. So what you do then, of course, before you purchase or before you cast the actual curse, you're going to first sit down and think about what you are strong with. I'm going by the old sayings of Sun Tzu, that if you know your enemy and you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know not the enemy, but you know yourself, for every battle won, you will also lose a battle. And if you know neither yourself nor your enemy, you will suffer defeat. So these are the steps that we will be addressing, because I very much approach magical warfare like a person would approach physical warfare. You need to train it, you need to develop it, you need to understand your weapons, your tools of choice. You need to understand the system or systems that you work in. So that is the very first prerequisite, that you would obviously have or develop your own system. For example, if you follow my channel, you will likely know that I primarily work with runes, with the Elder Fufark in particular. So, that is a main tool in my arsenal. I also use other things like Galder, like I have mentioned, which is also rune magic, of course, but there are certain components that are not necessarily, inherently involved in the actual drawing of runes, because Galder is more about song and spell songs and, poetry and weaving words and chanting and stuff like that, which is not necessary for actually charging a rune or a bind rune. So these are things you can use, alchemy or whatever system you use. Like if you are a ceremonial magician, you can use that to bargain with your desired deities, your desired demons, even, if you will. And I use the term demon very lightly here. So, these are all possibilities. You want to get skilled in that. You want to know what you're doing. You want to know what herbs to use. If you use herbs, for example, if you wish to, let's say that you wish to target someone's finances. So if you are a practitioner, if you are a rune master and you work with the Elder Fufark, if you wish to target someone's finances, what do you target? Okay, you wish to target finances. We take Fehu. We take maybe Ophila for inheritance. We take maybe Ophila for the home, the hearth. Cripple their ability to pay rent if you want to use it in such a manner. You want to use Burkanov or business related stuff, etc., etc. So there you have 3 runes that you could potentially use in a bind rune for a curse on someone's finances. You may want to use Nauvis to restrain, to restrict, Isa to freeze, to freeze over, to stifle, to prevent that. You will want to maybe use Furisas, sow chaos, etc., etc. You will want to get, maybe herbs to dress your candle with that are aimed at finances, and then give it the intent of crippling the finances. You will want to maybe use, if you use candles, black candles, green candles. Hey, and look at that, I'm actually sort of giving you a spell to use already. But, black can of course be used as a protection color, but it can also be used as a baneful color, of course. So if you combine green and black, that could mean protection of finances, or it could mean the tainting of financial energies around the person. So that is something that that is a certain manner in which you could use it, in which you could apply such symbolism to facilitate your will, to facilitate your magic. That is something that okay, so you have now the basics, you have the basic knowledge, you have the basic know-how, you have the basic idea of what you want to do. Next, what you do, you go into meditation, perhaps you trance journey, you observe your opponent, you observe their shields, and not all of them will be visible if they are smart. Some of them may be shrouded, some of them may be cloaked. For example, I have most of my spirits cloaked, I have most of my shielding pretty open, and I do that on purpose. However, I have some cloaked. I'm not going to tell you which are which, obviously, because that would be stupid of me. But most of my spirits are cloaked. I do this on purpose. I've literally had opponents approach me in dreams where they were taunting me about how few spirits I had, and then they saw how many I actually have working with me, and then they were like, oh fuck, stuff like that. Use deception, use feints, use all strategies that you would use in physical warfare. It is literally the same, except on a spiritual, magical level. You do not want to have everything in the open. Always use trickery, use deception, shroud and shield yourself, protect yourself. Never ever launch an attack on someone before you have properly worked on your own defenses. Don't taunt someone that you don't know for sure that you can attack. Don't ever attack blindly. Gather intelligence, gather information, and probe their defenses is what I would absolutely say before you launch the actual curse. If you just launch an actual curse at someone and their shields are blocking it, you will have wasted potentially an hour or 2 on ritual, on resources, on your candles, on your herbs, and all this shit costs money. Magic is pretty expensive. So it is through magic that I can afford half the shit I do pretty much at this point. So, it is imperative that you come into a magical duel prepared. And you do not want to launch this shit blindly because, like I said, it costs money, it costs time, it costs all this stuff. So, and not only that, they may have defenses in place which can actually reflect the magic back at you, and in that case, if you don't have your own defenses up properly, you're fucked. So think on that very carefully before you actually attack anybody. And probe their defenses. Send little tiny spells at them to, and then observe how their shields react, observe how their defenses deal with it, and then slowly start peeling off their defenses like you start peeling it off like the outer skin of an onion. You start peeling off their defenses through spells that penetrate, pierce their shields, that break their shields apart. You will want to attack their weaknesses and leave their strengths alone. It is actually very smart to think about what your opponent's weaknesses are. If you know them in person, what kind of person are they? Are they very hot-headed? Lure them into, doing stuff irrationally. Are they very methodical? Try to sow discord. Are these kinds of things, you will want to provoke them into making mistakes of their own. And I'm talking about magical duels here. Now, of course, most people don't know magic these days. I am aware of that. And these people may, however, still have protections. They may have protections from past life magic that they've done. They may be protected by a deity. Because yes, there is absolutely truth in the fact that if someone is a Christian, that they may be saved by Jesus. Yeah, it's possible. If the other deity that you work against, such as Christ or Yahweh or Jehovah, if they don't like you, yeah, they may go out of their way to fuck your magic up. Yes, it's possible. I've had it happen. But you need to just use your head, because no matter what they claim, they are not. They are not omnipotent. They are not all powerful. The end. The gods you work with will have their own strengths, their own abilities in dealing with that. And if it comes to that level where there are deities involved, that is, of course, where you will want to start bargaining, where you will want to start negotiating with deities, trading favors, making contracts, perhaps even if you are so inclined. So these are all things that you will want to keep in mind and consider. I think that pretty much concludes this video. I hope that this has provided you some very solid, basic 101 advice on how to approach the art of cursing, and perhaps strip away some of your inhibitions and worries about the art of cursing and about any potential backlash, etc., etc. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Hell.